Hey guys, today we're here on the e-commerce opportunity where I'm joined by Paul. Paul's actually someone that I think I met through a mutual friend and I actually invested in this company. So we're going to get to that in a bit. But Paul, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good. Great to chat again, Chase.
Yeah, dude, I'm so pumped. I'm so excited about all the growth that you guys are having. So I can't wait to talk about all of that in a second. Do you mind kind of starting with like a high level of your background and what you're working on?
Yeah, for sure. So where did it all begin? I started getting into e-commerce after a computer science degree at Stanford. So interestingly, I joined early on a company called NutriBox, which was renamed to HBMN as an engineer, and went from coding the website to thinking about digital marketing, e-commerce, building a Facebook ads channel, building an influencer marketing channel, just because we realized that the way to grow an e-commerce brand is not to build more features on your custom platform. So through that experience, I learned a ton about digital marketing and e-commerce. Did that for about 4 years and a half, 5 years. We can talk about that a little bit. And that led to me understanding a lot of the different nuances and problems that e-commerce operators have. And about a year and a half ago, right when LA COVID lockdown started happening, we started Archive in order to build software to help e-commerce brands automate a lot of their digital marketing workflows. I remember spending hours and hours managing digital asset libraries. I remember using these crazy spreadsheets to manage influencer marketing programs. And I remember talking to all of my friends thinking, wait, this is like such a slow manual process. Like, what is a Shopify app? What is a Shopify app? There was so much opportunity in this, booming industry. And especially given that COVID started accelerating all of this growth, it just felt like the right time to start, building software, not just for one brand, right? And helping HBMN get its stuff done, but really helping all of these other e-commerce brands that are having the exact same issues, right? Typically brands care about demand generation, brands care about fulfillment, brands care about the same things over and over again. So we think there's a really good spot for more people to come in and build software to help brand owners do what they do best, which is think about products, think about stories, and not necessarily worry about how to contact 1,000 influencers or how to manage your asset library or how do you save your feed posts. So fast forward a year and a couple of months, we're now about 35 people full time. We work with some awesome companies like Four Sigmatic, like Pros, like Magic Spoon, and we recently raised a really awesome round of funding led by Stripe, which is going to be a great partner in the e-commerce space. I'm sure most people are aware of them. And we're also fortunate to bring along some awesome investors in the e-com space. For example, Chase, who are going to be really, really helpful in helping us, continue to grow and unlock different areas.
Amazing, dude. I'm so pumped. Well, I want to talk about all things influencer. Before we do, we talk about some definitions. I know you guys talk a lot about, nano-influencers and things like that. Can you break down like what a nano-influencer is and then any other definitions that you think are important to know before we continue?
Yeah, for sure. So even before, what is an influencer? To us, an influencer is someone that has a platform that you can activate, right? Instead of giving Facebook money to show your content, your brand to people, you work directly with, humans typically that have their own platform, their own communities. Chase is a great example of an influencer. He influences people on Twitter, through the podcast, through communities and events in a number of ways. Typically, what we focus on is influencers on Instagram because that's a platform that we have a lot of leverage and a lot of development done so that we can really crush it there. And when we think about nano influencers on Instagram, they're not like your typical influencers that are maybe professional and do this for a living and maybe they have 1 million followers. They tend to be smaller. So we define it as the 1 to 25K range. Some of them still have 1 to 25K follower range. Some of them still have really, really great engagement, right? Thousands of likes, tens of thousands of likes, and can really move the needle. But they're typically a little bit more authentic than your big influencers. You can think of a nano influencer as your popular friend in high school that just amassed a few more followers. They're sharing cool content about, their running routine, their work, a little bit of everything. And so it's this long tail of people on Instagram. Because if you think about podcasts, if you think about YouTube channels, everyone there is either influencer or they don't really get any traction, right? You either make it big or don't really make it and don't have an audience. Instagram is very different because it's kind of like a combination of this, influencer network where people broadcast a lot of content and also a place where everyone hangs out. And so there's this massive opportunity to work with these people that don't have 1 million followers, but there's millions of these people. And so when we work with influencers, we look for really authentic people that we can kind of stack up, right? If you work with 1,000 of these smaller people, you can potentially have really, really good impact that might even be better. And sometimes it's consistently better than working with these larger, more expensive influencers that, everybody's bidding for their time.
I love that. So in your experience, like what gets these nano influencers excited? Is it money? Is it affiliate? Is it product? Like what's the way that you guys get these people to work with you or your brands?
So we're in a fortunate position where we have a lot of demand, and so we can be very picky with the brands that we work with. And I know, same for your agency, Chase, right? And we only work with, nice consumer brands that have awesome products. We really focus on gifting. There's a lot of ways that you can work with influencers. Like you mentioned, there's whitelisting, there's affiliates, there's all kinds of things, and different influencers might want different things. They might want a combination of things. But from our perspective, we typically work with companies that have really cool products and an exciting brand. And so what we use to start the relationship is we offer the product to try. And so some of our product, like Magic Spoon, really, really delicious cereal, or Fort Sigmatic have some really high quality, vegan protein that people can try, or HVMN has some awesome collagen powder that is extremely high quality. So these influencers are really excited to try the product, and that kicks off the relationship. Now, we work with a lot of brands the way we think about our programs is we'll build the relationship and build a community of influencers. And then we almost like promote influencers to different areas within the company, whether that's long-term content creation, maybe we put them in touch with a social media manager, whether that's joining the affiliate program, putting them in touch with the affiliate manager, or whitelisting. So we like to kick off the relationship with a really organic, natural, like, hey, would love for you to try the product, see where things go relationship, and then continue giving them product over time so they can continue to create content in exchange for product because they really love the product. But there's a lot of ways that you can take that initial relationship.
I love that. And I know you keep mentioning content. It's something that we've talked about offline a little bit. And I know the importance of content, in 2021 and beyond is so important. We talk about, content, UGC, ways to leverage it, or anything that you want and kind of share on that topic.
Yeah, so UGC for a lot of brands can be a cheat code. Some companies really don't like to use it. Sometimes it's for good reasons. Sometimes it's not for good reasons. Maybe a good reason is if you're a really high fashion brand and you're really deliberate about your, the way your product looks and your types of models that represent your product. But in most cases, that's probably not the case. And you should be leveraging UGC. So what even is UGC? What about influencer content? Is that UGC? UGC stands for user generated content. To me, the main difference between UGC and non-UGC is that non-UGC, your brand team, your content team in-house commissions a photo shoot or something, or maybe your team does it or whatever. Usually it's kind of expensive. It's very biased because you're coming up with it. So that can sometimes limit creativity, and it's hard to create a ton of it. UGC, on the other hand, is very natural and tends to be very authentic. And it's something that's created organically, typically, or a lot of the time through your influencers, through your users. If you just have 1,000 customers and your product is relatively shareable on Instagram, you're going to get a ton of content from these users. You're going to get feed posts that show your product in like a beautiful setting. You're going to get stories where people talk about the product, share their experiences, share how it tastes. All of that is really, really valuable. And we see a lot of companies do really well by leveraging their UGC for different channels. A great example is Facebook ads. What is the biggest problem with Facebook ads right now? We need creative, need more creative, need to test more creative, more testing, more creative, different types of creatives. And so having like a UGC pipeline, having, for example, community influencers, or finding programs or ways to bake in UGC creation in your email flows. I know, Chase, you recently talked about like a really great way to give people incentives after they purchase, give them a couple dollars off to encourage them to post a photo review or video review, right? All that stuff to build that bank of content. You can get yourself to a point where you're generating 100, even 1,000 assets every month. And the cool thing with those assets is they're going to be very, very diverse people, diverse use cases, diverse settings, diverse type, photo, video, diverse looks. And that's really, really hard to match with a brand shoot, because it's like with a branded shoot, you got to create a brief for every shot. So to get that same breadth of content creativity is very difficult. So now when you're testing that content on Facebook, two things happen. First of all, you can run hundreds of tests because you have so much content and it's all different. The second thing is, especially right now, UGC can perform really, really well on Facebook. We see brands go from brand shoots to UGC and instantly see CPMs drop. Why does that happen? A lot of different reasons, but I think a nice way to think about it is that it feels a little bit more organic in the feed. Maybe it's like a little bit trickier because it doesn't look like a Nike ad, it looks like just some other person posting on Facebook or on Instagram. And so it feels very, very native compared to your branded shoot, but it can perform better, especially when you factor in the fact that you can test so much. And it's not just on Facebook. If you think about your cart abandonment flow, are you going to put yet another product shot on your white or gray background? Maybe you have some beautiful stylized photos from an expensive shoot. If you don't, throw in some UGC, throw in a story of one of your customers using your product, right? Maybe you have a microphone and the customer has a little video or of unboxing the microphone. You can turn that into a GIF or a GIF and put that in your email. And that can really, really help all of your marketing channels. Again, email, same thing for SMS. We see brands improve conversion rates by putting UGC reviews or UGC galleries in their photos, especially if you have like a, clothing or maybe pillows that might give people different angles or different understanding of what it looks like in people's homes. UGC really helps tell a story in addition to being really easy to create. So that can help your marketing in a number of different ways.
Dude, this is killer. I love this. I want to shift gears a little bit. So I know, I guess at one point you kind of were running like an agency doing a lot of this, and you're kind of moving now towards like tech and kind of SaaS and kind of an app. Can we talk about, anything that you're willing or wanting to share, any learnings, why you're moving in that direction away from kind of like just the agency to now like really tech enable?
Yeah, for sure. So it all started with the setup of when we got going. When I left HVMN, myself, Jeff, and a few of our team members, we were really excited to build Shopify apps. So we talked to founders, we talked to like over 100 e-commerce operators and owners. And I'm like, what's keeping you up at night? And they're like, hey, like I need better like analytics tools. Hey, I need a better way to sync my Facebook audiences. So we had a couple of these ideas for Shopify apps and we started working on them. We actually built a tool on Facebook and Shopify, and then that was live in the App Store and we built it and it worked. But in the meantime, we had a lot of demand for these influencer communities that we built. We ran this program at HVMN where instead of paying 100 influencers $5K, we wanted to gift thousands of influencers. And every month we would create these fancy kits. We did a squirrel backpack, for example. We did like a surprise mystery magazine box, for example, and gifted those to 250, 500 plus influencers. And that would just generate tremendous value for the company, a ton of content, a ton of awareness, a ton of sales. And a lot of other companies were doing that in the space, but in-house. For example, Halo Top, they had like 6 to 8 people full-time working on it. And so it was hard. And we saw a lot of agencies that were tackling influencer marketing go away from this direction because it was super manual and they just want to work with a small number of influencers and charge a lot of money because, it's just less work. So we're like, hey, we want to tackle that and we want to build that out. And there's a lot of demand for that. So we started developing a service which was formerly known as EAG. Now it's called Archive Communities, but our original name was EAG. And the reason we did that was actually to help fund the Shopify apps, right? Shopify apps take a while to build. And we were bootstrapping. And so we're like, hey, we're going to do this agency service so that I can pay for these apps. And after a month, we did like a couple of days of sales. I emailed like, 10, 20 people I knew in the space. And then we just never, sent an outbound email since then. We've been at capacity. The demand for these gifting programs is so strong because no one wants to do them. And it's way more authentic than working with a platform. And the brand gets to keep the community, right? When you're paying an agency to manage influencers or you're going through a talent network, you're paying the agency and the agency owns a relationship. So it's not like a compounding moat like SEO for your brand. When you're building a community of influencers and real relationships, well, in 12 months, that becomes more and more valuable. So the demand there was really, really strong. And so we were just like, yo, let's stop working on all these Shopify apps and let's start building software so that we can work with more companies, because we had literally companies knocking down our door being like, hey, Paul, when can we start? When can we start? And we're like, maybe like next quarter or the quarter after. Like, I have no idea. Like I can't talk later. And so we were very, very not demand constrained, but capacity constrained, fulfillment constrained, right? So we really had to get that nailed in. And then that kicked off a transition where we were building and running the service off Airtable and Google Sheets to thinking about turning it into a tech-enabled agency. So what's the difference between an agency and a tech-enabled agency? Essentially, tech-enabled agency to me has higher margins because you've built your own proprietary software to be able to run your service much more efficiently than just with humans and regular workflows. And so I think that so far we've done a great job transitioning from our agency to a tech-enabled agency. And the next phase there is going to be to turn that into full SaaS, right? So eventually, even with our influencer platform and program, Archive Communities, we think that can eventually be so automated and so self-serve that anyone can just go on, and our team that is currently, our account managers right now, they're awesome, really smart influencer marketers, can spend a lot more time on strategy, a lot more time on enterprise support, as opposed to on fulfillment, right? Because right now we still have a little bit of manual work finding influencers, responding to influencers, writing up reports and all of that. But all of that can be automated. And so it's interesting because we got into this with Shopify apps and we're like, let's do this agency to self-fund this app to, hey, wait, this agency has such good pull. Let's actually have our engineering team write software to help make it a tech-enabled agency. And the really interesting thing is throughout that process, as we build that software, and so that agency is called Archive Communities now. It's a service. We build and scale nano-influencer communities for brands. One of the interesting things was that about 6 months ago during Thanksgiving, we realized that one of the pieces of software that we developed for Archive Communities was a tool to save and label stories. So what do you mean by that? What do I mean by that? When we work with Four Sigmatic, for example, we're generating 500 pieces of content every month. We used to have humans save that piece of content. Stories disappear. So we had weekend shifts. It sucks. It was like everyone hated it at the company. We had to do it, right? Because it's a critical part of it. But we needed to find a way to automate that. So we automated that. And now we do that in a fully automated way. And during Thanksgiving, we realized last year, I was hanging out with Jeff in San Diego. We're fully remote, but this was like the first time we kind of met in person in like 6 months. We're hanging out in San Diego and we're like, wait, what if like every app could just have this automatic like story saving thing? And turns out that every single Shopify company that has an Instagram account wants this because they're either saving it manually or they're not saving it and they feel bad because they want to go on a vacation over the weekend and they have got to check Instagram while they're on a date to save this like story from an influencer. It's like really comically like not a fun process. And so that led to our second product, which is Archive app, right? So now the company's structured in a little bit of a different way. We're not just an agency transformed into a tech-enabled agency. We have Archive Communities, which is a tech-enabled service. And then we also have Archive app, which is a full-fledged Shopify app that is fully SaaS. And so we have two products. And the funny thing is that we kind of started out with Shopify apps and then went on the agency side to fund the Shopify apps. And then we're like, yeah, these Shopify apps are kind of crappy, like not as good traction as the agency service. And now we're like, wait, we discovered this new software opportunity and that is getting so much traction. So that is now like a big priority again. So I think really, really following like the customer journey and watching what people are doing, how they're using our software or tools that we built has informed a lot of the journey.
I love this, man. And the last thing I want to ask, and then if you want to add anything additional, by all means, please do. You mentioned about 35, 40 employees. And I know, a fair amount of those are actually overseas. And there's a fair amount of people overseas. I think you actually went to go visit and meet up with some of the devs in another country. Was it always the plan to hire kind of remote talent like that? Or did the pandemic, kind of what happened, kind of force your hands there? Like, how do you think about hiring globally and finding the right people all over the world, cost savings, like whatever that looks like?
Yeah, so that's actually a learning that was kicked off at HBMN where we had some people in-house in San Francisco, didn't work out. And then we were like, hey, let's just try hiring some people, outside, like let's open up to the rest of the world. Let's see what happens. And we did something very different where instead of, giving like the tickets and like the easy things and the boring things to this offshore team, we're like, hey, you guys are full team members starting today. Like you're going to join all hands. You're going to join every Slack channel. There's no offshore team, not offshore. There's just team. And like, you're going to get as much ownership as everyone. And when you do that, you really break a lot of the culture barriers and ownership issues with typical offshore teams. So we did that at HBMN and we saw massive success. And I think there's two reasons why that works. First of all, there's smart people all over the world, right? That's like 100% of the case. I think a lot of people, like myself coming out of Stanford, we live in this bubble where it's like, oh, like all the smart kids went to Stanford, all the smart kids are in Palo Alto. If we don't hire people in Silicon Valley, we're not going to make it. We're not going to have big business. But I think that's actually completely wrong, right? There's good talent density in San Francisco, but it's very competitive. It's more expensive. It's very hard to get good retention. And I think one of the most valuable things for a company is to retain great people. If you churn your team members every 2 years, that's so much training compared to if your average tenure is like 6 to 10 years. So I think that's like the secret, advantage of working with people across the world, because you can give them like a sick job compared to, maybe something that's like super competitive in Silicon Valley. And they're just as smart. It just requires like a couple other systems and workflows to get that dialed in. So we had good success at HBMN. And when we started, Archive, it was literally the weekend or the day that COVID happened in LA and shutdown happened. So it wasn't even like, we knew we were going to focus on remote because we had great team members around the world. And I wasn't even in the same city as Jeff. Jeff was in San Francisco. I was in LA. Adam was in New York. And Evgeny was in Minsk, and Mihail was in Amsterdam, and we had another person, Gennady in Minsk, and Sergey was in the Ukraine. So like the founding team was already in like 7 different countries or cities, right? So it's just like, okay, like this is just got to work. And we just really pushed hard into it. And we're like, we're going to be maximally globally distributed. And we're also going to very explicitly treat everyone like owners. So I think, again, a lot of people are like, oh, I can only work with, we have this like core team or headquarters, and we have all of the smart people that get a lot of ownership. Then we have like, we outsource some things. That's okay. That can work for some things, but that is not how you build a really high trust, really high performance, globally distributed organization. You literally have to break those boundaries and aggressively, make your culture open to having everyone contribute ideas and be on the same playing field. And we saw great success there. And it was obviously almost like a cheat code, setting up our company like that during COVID, because we just never had an office. We were always like 100% ready to go there.
This is fantastic. I appreciate you sharing your time and insight there. Is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't talk about? If not, I appreciate you being here.
No, that's it.
Sweet, man. You're the man. Thank you so much. What are the websites for the companies, or where should people check out kind of what you're building, and then where should people find you personally?
Yeah, check us out at archive.ai, archive.ai, and you can see our 2 products there. We have Archive Communities, which is great for e-commerce brands that are looking to scale their influencer marketing efforts. So if you're either trying to test out influencer marketing or scale influencer marketing, and you're spending 100K plus a month on digital marketing, then that's gonna be a really good fit for Archive Communities, because we can scale that program for you really effectively. Now, if you're a Shopify store and you have people posting on Instagram and you're tired of manually saving that content, then you can check out Archive app. Super easy to use app. You can join the waitlist on the website. It's all on archive.ai. And then I tweet about e-commerce sometimes. Check me out on Twitter at BennyGeri. My username is my last name, Benigeri.
Dude, you're the man. I'll have those links below. Thank you so much for being here.
For sure. Thanks, Chase.
All right, cheers.